In February 2024, Deputy Minister for Social Partnership Hannah Blythyn posted a video in which she outlined her vision of a Wales where people are free to be their authentic selves.
LGBT History Month is an opportunity to reflect on how far we've come in the struggle for LGBTQ plus equality and celebrate the lives of LGBTQ plus people who for too long and too often have been hidden from history. Not knowing our history risks our future. This is no time to sit back, to not speak out and think the job is done and that rights are won. But it's right that we recognise the progress we have made because much of that progress is part of our all too recent history. In my lifetime alone, we couldn't be mentioned in classrooms, we could be refused service and we couldn't marry the person we love. We don't just need to reflect on our past, we have to learn lessons from it and redouble our commitment to create a Wales where everyone feels free, supported and safe to be and live our lives as our authentic selves.
This is a term derived from queer theory, as Susan Cox explains.
Hi, I'm Derrick Jensen. This is Resistance Radio on the Progressive Radio Network. My guest today is Susan Cox. She's a feminist writer, activist, and educator in philosophy. She's a regular contributor to Feminist Current and member of the Women's Liberation Front Board of Directors. So first, I'd like to thank you for your work, and second, I'd like to thank you for being on the program.
Thank you, Derrick. Thanks for having me.
So today I'd like to talk about queer theories. It feels like there's been something of a coup in academia, sort of a silent coup, and also in discourse in general. And at this point, this thing called queer theory frankly seems to control a lot of academia these days and a lot of public discourse. But I'm sure that a lot of people haven't heard of it. What is queer theory?
So, Derrick, you're certainly right in that there has been this massive coup in academia of queer theory, and we see it pretty much everywhere, especially in feminism today. So queer theory basically problematizes what's called the binary opposition. For example, man versus woman. Queer theory argues that binary oppositions are inherently hierarchical, in that one term is privileged over the other as the primary, and the other term is merely its deviant or derivative. For example, man is primary and woman is merely the negation of man. So queer theory argues that we need to deconstruct all of these social binary oppositions. For example, man versus woman, heterosexual versus homosexual. And we do this through the strategy of queering. And queering is basically a strategy of conceptual and categorical border transgression, in which each category becomes essentially meaningless and not distinct from the other. For example, if we take man and redefine man as not being a male person, but whoever feels like a man, then we've queered that category and is no longer distinct from woman. And this is seen as a progressive movement in getting rid of social oppression. Because queer theory views oppression as springing not from one class of people subordinating another and exploiting them for labor and resources for their material benefit, but oppression comes from this very act of labeling these groups in a binary fashion, which is seen as restrictive and oppressive, and people cannot express their authentic selves in this binary opposition.
How did we get here? It is impossible to be unaware that there is a cultural battle over language. In the LGBTQ plus action plan for Wales, the word gender is defined as a term that is used to refer to whether someone's internal sense of themselves is female, male or non-binary. This is a psychological definition and contrasts starkly with the definition in the Oxford English Dictionary, where the word gender is defined as 1. A synonym for sex, which is a biological definition, or 2. The state of being male or female as expressed by cultural or social distinctions and differences rather than biological ones. This is a sociological definition. Of course, the word gender cannot both be a term that is used to refer to whether someone's internal sense of themselves is male or female or non-binary, and at the same time be used as a synonym for sex, but because it will be unclear what definition is being used. But schools are now required to teach children that gender is not a synonym for sex, but is instead an identity. On the Brook website it states, gender and sex are two very separate terms, despite people commonly thinking they mean the same thing. Brook work very closely with Cardiff University. Although originally coined in the 1960s by psychologist Robert Stoller, the concept of gender identity and the new definition of the word gender is pushed by queer theory, and queer theory has had a massive influence on all our institutions. Anyone who pushes back against this redefinition of the word is invariably branded a bigot. The influence of queer theory in Wales is particularly well recorded. In 1990, Judith Butler's seminal work Gender Trouble was published. Butler argues that power lies within language, and any language that emphasises the significance of biological sex is oppressive. Butler argues that to overcome this oppression, discourse should be changed to downplay the significance of biological sex and emphasise the significance of a personal gender. Now, in her 2006 paper, They Won't Let Us Play Unless You're Going Out of One of Them, Girls, Boys and Butler's Heterosexual Matrix in the Primary Years, Cardiff University academic Professor Emma Reynolds writes, the heteronormativity of gender relations in the early years is certainly ripe for some gender trouble, and some of this work is well underway and radically disrupting a range of gender and sexual truths in what might be more fittingly described as the heteroformative years. On the 1st of March 2017, then Education Minister Kirsty Williams appointed Professor Reynolds as chair of an expert panel to advise on the teaching of relationships and sex education in Welsh schools. She wrote, I'm delighted Emma Reynolds, Professor in Childhood Studies at the School of Social Sciences at Cardiff University, has agreed to chair the group. Professor Reynolds brings a wealth of knowledge and relevant experience in this area, and in addition to teaching on undergraduate and postgraduate programmes in the field of childhood studies, she has recently collaborated with Welsh Women's Aid, NSPCC Cymru and the Children's Commissioner to develop the online resource Agenda, a young people's guide to making positive relationships matter. In December 2017, the expert panel produced 2 reports. Informing the Future of the Sex and Relationships Education in Wales and the Future of the Sex and Relationships Education in Wales. In the glossary of the reports are the new definitions of the words sex and gender. The definition of the word gender is not a definition that you'll find in any dictionary. It is far too verbose, but its verbosity may well have been used to camouflage 2 significant claims. Number 1, gender is not a synonym for sex. Number 2, gender is an identity. Of course, this contradicts the dictionary definition. Indeed, Johnson's online dictionary claims that the word gender was being used as a synonym for sex as early as 1773. But now, children will be taught that the word gender is not a synonym for sex. On 21st of May 2018, the BBC published an article about Carwyn Jones entitled Men Need to Understand Feminism to Tackle Inequality.
Nobody argues in favour of gender inequality, but we have to make sure that actually we see the gap that we have in terms of pay reduced, that we make it easier, for example, for women to return to the workplace, perhaps after they've been caring for an older relative or for a child. All these things have to come together and work together to make sure that we deliver the best offer possible. Now, Sweden has done this. It's declared itself to be the world's first feminist government. Now, we don't want to copy other countries. We want to learn from them and then, of course, go beyond that.
What Carwyn Jones may have failed to appreciate is that there have been different waves of feminism that have come out of academia. A Wikipedia article describes third wave feminism. Third wave feminism is a feminist movement that began in the early 1990s, prominent in the decades prior to the fourth wave. Grounded in the civil rights advances of the second wave, Gen X third wave feminists, born in the 1960s and 70s, embraced diversity and individualism in women and sought to redefine what it meant to be a feminist. The third wave saw the emergence of new feminist currents and theories such as intersectionality, sex positivities, vegetarian ecofeminism, transfeminism and postmodern feminism. The article continues. Another crucial point for the start of the third wave is the publication in 1990 of Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity by Judith Butler, which soon became one of the most influential works of contemporary feminist theory. In it, Butler argued against homogenizing conceptions of women, which had a normative and exclusionary effect not only in the social world more broadly, but also within feminism. This was the case not only for racialized or working-class women, but also for masculine, lesbian or non-binary women. She outlined her theory of gender as performativity, which posited that gender works by enforcing a series of repetitions of verbal and non-verbal acts that generate the illusion of a coherent and intelligible gender expression and identity, which would otherwise lack any essential property. Lastly, Butler developed the claim that there is no natural sex, but that what we call as such is always already culturally mediated and therefore inseparable from gender. These views were foundational for the field of queer theory and played a major role in the development of third-wave feminist theories and practices. The day after, on the 22nd of May 2018, Kirsty Williams made a statement in the Senedd about relationships and sexuality education.
Many of you will know that this month marks the 30th anniversary of the introduction of Section 28, which forbade schools to promote or treat with equity non-heterosexual relationships. Though Section 28 has been consigned to history, its effect can still be found within our education system. Schools often find it difficult to provide fully inclusive sex and relationship education and can struggle to respond to the diverse needs of their learners and instead follow a one-size-fits-all approach. Presiding Officer, this has to change. I believe Wales must do more to support all of our young people to develop healthy relationships, maintain good mental health and keep safe. Last year, I established the Sex and Relationship Expert Panel to provide independent advice on these matters, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the expert panel members and its chair, Professor Emma Reynolds, for their excellent work. And I intend to rename this area of study as Relationships and Sexuality Education, RSE. This is to place the emphasis on learning about the formation and maintenance of healthy relationships as a key purpose of this area of study. Sexuality education, as defined by the World Health Organization, is learning about the wider social, cultural constructions around relationships. This includes how we form beliefs and attitudes, how we establish a range of relationships, and how cultural issues such as gender identity, stereotypes, and inequality shape our values. This wider learning, which is included under sexuality education, is critical and crucial to developing young people's understanding of a broad range of issues.
Conservative member of the Senedd Darren Miller expressed some reservations. Plaid Cymru representative Lle Griffiths was fully supportive. UKIP education spokesperson Michelle Brown thought that parental opt-out should be retained. No one queried the redefinition of the words sex and gender. Some thought the changes were very significant. The Wales Centre for Public Policy has a stated aim to collaborate with leading policy experts to provide ministers, the civil service and public services with high-quality evidence and independent advice that helps them to improve policy decisions and implementation outcomes. The centre is funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, the Welsh Government and Cardiff University. In December 2018, Susanna Nessum had an article published on the Centre's website. The article was titled 5 Things You Should Know About Gender Equality in Wales. The article states, the Wales Centre for Public Policy is currently contributing to the Welsh Government's Gender Equality Review, announced by the First Minister earlier this year, with the aim of making Wales a world leader in gender equality. One of the 5 things you should know, apparently, is that gender is often misunderstood and sometimes confused or limited to related concepts such as sex, gender identity or gender expression. It is important to understand that gender is a political concept that organises much of society. The Welsh Government has chosen to define gender as how sex bodies are lived, represented and regulated. Gender is therefore a broad concept encompassing gender as identity and as expression. Who knew that the Welsh Government had the authority to change the definition of words? The link takes you to the future of the sex and relationships education curriculum in Wales.